imagine if it's anything like what like our experience has been the last month, you guys are probably ready to just stop talking about it and go and do it and play the game and just experience it. Talk about everything leading up to it.
Yeah, I think the experience part is going to be the best thing about it. Obviously we want to put on a quality brand of soccer. We want to get a win against Northwood, but I think the student athlete experience that we're providing to our players is terrific. And anytime that you can add that into your program, it's a huge tool to develop your culture and also to continue recruiting really good athletes. And I think not from just an athletic standpoint, but from the university as a whole, it's just going to be a great experience that I think everyone is from downstate all the way to the UP. Everybody's going to be excited about it. There's a lot of energy and a lot of buzz about it right now. And probably one of the most interesting things that I've ever done within a college program. And what I found now is a lot of our Michigan players have never been to Mackinac Island. So this is going to be a lot of our players' first time ever being to Mackinac Island.
Yeah, and you're bringing everyone too. Talk about that and why it's important, because obviously in season, there's only a certain amount of players that will make that travel squad. But talk about why it was important to bring everyone along for this trip.
Yeah, just because it's so early into our preseason, we want to make sure that our team can bond. You know what I mean? That we can develop the right culture, because we're firm believers that in order for us to battle together, we have to bond first. And I think it's going to be really important for our relationships to be developed outside of the game so they can ultimately positively affect the game when we get there. So it's going to be a great experience for everyone to come to get to experience what a road trip is like. And I think if I was going to go to any road trip outside of maybe the GLIAC tournament or the national tournament, I think I would pick the Mackinac Island trip. And this is the first experience that we've had together with volleyball. Last year we did some pumpkin carving, we did a beach bonfire night. So our teams gel really well together, and the coaching staff gets together and they get along very well. So I think with that group joining and us being able to be a part of that is truly something special.
Yeah, and where the games are slated, the 12 o'clock volleyball, 5 o'clock soccer, I'd imagine you guys will, depending on how many people can even fit in that gym, be trying to be there and support and then go over and play your respective team.
Yeah, exactly. And I highly doubt that we're going to be able to go into the gym, but I can guarantee you they're going to hear us outside. And I think volleyball can attest to that, because anytime it aligns on the road and we can get to a volleyball game or a football game or something there, we're going to go, and we're going to go in full force. And it doesn't matter where we're going, you're going to hear us, because it's just great to have that kind of connection within the department. And it just makes everybody within the athletic department stronger and the relationship stronger. I think that's one of the greatest things about the department right now is the teams and the staff fully support one another. It's great to have that connection even outside of the game. And so yeah, as you alluded to, I doubt that we can get into the gym, but it's going to be great to interact with some of the students that are coming. And also the theater program did an absolute great job at organizing and setting a lot of this stuff up. And we can't thank, President Tessman, Bill Dignite, and all those individuals that did a lot of behind-the-scenes work to get this going. So we're extremely proud and extremely grateful to be headed over there.
Coach, what does practice look like? You're waiting for the experience, and that's the main goal, is taking the whole team and having that. But what's practice look like leading up to kind of an event like this?
Yeah, we didn't change too much. Our preseason has been pretty consistent with what we've done over the last 3 years. I'm not sure if you guys were around then, but basically, the way that we developed, myself, my previous assistant, Darian Powell, and Laura Whalen, we've all been to the national tournament as players, and now Laura and I have done it as coaches. So we all sat down and we figured out what were the consistencies when all three of us went, and what worked and what we liked, and that's how we developed our game plan. And so we didn't change anything. We normally do have an exhibition or a scrimmage pretty early on, and especially when you bring in new players and early on in the preseason, we like to play. We want to see what we got. We want to do some evaluation, and then we want to get them going right away and get them into some competition. I think the only way to get match fit is to play matches. And so right now we're getting a lot of minutes underneath our belt, and then we'll start to dial it down a little bit as we approach Saturday. So I think we're going at it hard still, and then we'll start to slow down a little bit come Thursday evening, have a really good time on the island, let them just experience it all on Friday, no training, no nothing, no scout, and then just Saturday do a little bit more of experience in the island and then playing the game.
Has there been a learning curve for you this year as a coach with new players on the roster and more coaching under your belt?
I don't know if there'd be a learning curve, but I think as you go from year 1 to year 4, there's more of an understanding and more of a, I guess if you will, more of a comfortability level of it. Like you have certain checkpoints along the way. You want to meet certain milestones. You want to make sure that they're want to stretch to see how match fit they are. So, right now we play for maybe 60 minutes and stretch some players for 30 minutes within that half. And so we want to ultimately get some players close to anywhere 40, 35 minutes within a half. So I wouldn't say that there'd been a huge learning curve, but one thing that is always important is that you do get those new players acclimated into your system, your brand, and teach them the Wildcat way. Because, once everybody beforehand, they had a way of how they were doing things. They were all some of the best players on their club, in their high school, whatever team they're on. And then now that pond is no longer a pond, it's Lake Superior. And now it's much more challenging, and getting those players acclimated, getting them bonded with their players, and getting them to feel comfortable and confident is really always, in my mind, the most difficult part about it, because then you're dealing with human nature rather than the actual game, which as coaches, you spend a lot of time around the game. You've probably played the game for a long time. So it's always, I think, in my mind, the learning curve is staying connected to the younger generation, and learning their lingo. You know what I mean? What was it? Mid. I learned a new word today. You know what I mean? Just trying to stay hip and trying to get them comfortable and ready to go.
Could you use that in a sentence?
The food was not mid. It was much better. I think that's right. Yeah. I taught him boss.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit older, but boss, that's boss. I know that's not around anymore, but that was something growing up. It's boss. Lozier definitely knows that one. Yep.
Sweet. Coach, you touched on fitness a little bit. How would you assess the girls' fitness level coming in from summer break after the first few training sessions?
It was exceptional. I was, pleasantly surprised and happy with the way that we performed in our fitness test. We really use it as a benchmark to see where we're at and to see how much fitness we need to add into our preseason. And, I would say around 90% of our team passed the fitness test. And so, me as a coach, I'm sitting there thinking, oh, geez, did I not make this hard enough? But then you can see that fitness level also go into our practice sessions and our training matches to see the level's not dropping off at a certain point. That means they're actually have a really good fitness level. So anytime that you can come in and have a team be as fit as they are right now, that means you don't need to spend any time working on fitness as much. You can actually get into more of the tactical things and playing and spend more time around the game rather than carving out minutes to do fitness. And so it's been really good to see the team just as fit as they are, and I think it's because they're bought in, they've got a belief, they've got to experience a really good year last year, and now all of it that we're talking about currently is the target that we have on our back. And we really feel like there's some teams around the Midwest and the GLIAC that are really gunning for us this year. So we're preparing a little bit harder than we normally do, and I think it's only because our expectations and standards have risen after last year.
being around this program, has anybody stepped up that has surprised you going into this year, coming off of last year?
You know, it's still early on. You know, I mean, we just completed our third session. I don't know if anyone has surprised me necessarily, besides maybe one or two people that I'm going to keep close to the chest for a little bit, just because I'm a huge bulletin board individual and I watch everyone else's press conferences. So, but I will say that I think if there's anyone that deserves recognition is, you know, there's Izzy, Brenna, Halo, and Gwen, and they're the last players in this program that were already here before I came, and now they're entering in their 5th year, and things were tough. Things were tough, and they had a choice in those moments to decide whether or not they wanted to hit the transfer portal, whether or not Northern was the place for them, or if they just wanted to naturally just quit. And when things did get tough, they got tougher. And those players were a huge part of the turnaround, and they stayed and they bought in, and they were committed to this program and to each other and to the teammates that they had, because to be where we are is largely a part of the classes that believed it and bought into what we were trying to do. Without them, we're not where we are today. And I think if anyone needs recognition, it's those 4, because it's so easy to jump on a portal. It's so easy to leave. And when things got difficult, they just met that challenge head on. And we're extremely grateful that they're in our program. We're very grateful that they stuck around. And I've had them for 4 years now, and it's just been a blessing to have those people in your program.
Coach, what advantage do you gain for having players like that? You know, you've had them for 4 years now, and you have a new class coming in. What's the advantage there for those girls that have been here for 4 years to be able to, you know, give some wisdom to those younger players?
Yeah, it's so important, because we want a player-led culture. We want a self-reliant culture. And when you have players that have been through the fire with us and know what it's like, they can then mentor and help those younger players through the process. You know, I kind of joke with our upperclassmen and tell them, like, hey, have you found any consistencies with the way that we approach this season, or the way that we do things? And they're like, yeah, you know, we definitely do, because it's very much the same each and every year, because we found what works for us, and then obviously we add some tweaks here and there. But when you have a leadership group and also informal leaders within our program, it makes a world of difference. So some of those players may not wear a captain's armband, but they believe that they need to play a massive role into our program to help get the younger players acclimated into what we're doing, and just being another vocal presence, being another positive support system, helping them out through the transition. I mean, everybody that's in Northern Michigan is far away from home, and that can be a difficult transition for a lot of young people when it's the first time they've left home. And what we see is the upperclassmen really take those players under their wing and help them through those difficult times.
The experience itself on the island, obviously super important, but the game itself, what do you see when you look at a team like Northwood? I'm not sure if you've cracked open the scouting book too much yet, but I have to imagine you're probably pretty forward seeing on that.
Yeah, I mean, new coach. Anytime you get a new coach, and you see that in the GLIAC right now, it's you usually see an uptick. You know, players have something to prove, and so I fully expect them to be ready to go. And although Mike is not necessarily totally new to the program, anytime, as I mentioned, you get a new coach, that requires other players in that locker room to self-evaluate, have some self-awareness about where they are, because a new coach brings in new ideas, new systems, new starting 11. So I fully expect them to be probably at a different level than they were at last year, just because you're going to have an uptick anytime a new coach comes in. So right now, though, we're really going to focus on us and what we're trying to do, just so that we can prepare for even after Northwood too as well. But you know, anytime you play a team like Northwood, you know what you're going to get, and that's hard work. They're going to battle. They're going to run through you. They're going to be organized, and they're going to be ready for the challenge.
Has the team been watching the World Cup at all to get any strategies off of how the players do it at a national level?
Yeah, I haven't dived too much into about strategies and whatnot with him. It's been more, my communication with him about the World Cup has been more of an enjoyment type of thing. To see younger players play the game, see themselves, the females represented on the world stage, and see so much buzz and excitement about the World Cup is huge for the game. I mean, it's only gonna grow the game in the United States. And one of the things that we usually do during preseason is we watch the documentary about the 1999ers, the 99ers, and the way they changed soccer in general. It doesn't matter about the gender. That group that won the World Cup in '99 changed soccer in the United States. And I remember watching it. I remember where I was when we won the World Cup. And I think that's just so important for them to see themselves represented at a high level and to really watch the world stop what they're doing and celebrate this game.
Great, thanks.
All right, guys, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Sarah, you're up.
Second trip to the island. Probably just as exciting, maybe even a little easier now going into it, having a good idea of what this whole event and this trip entails. Talk about the energy around your team, and now a lot of new additions that will be making the trip for the first time for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we're very excited about this opportunity, and there's so many layers to why we're excited. You're right, last year we went through it, and it was just kind of like this idea we came up with, and we'll figure out what happens, and we just learned so much. We had such a positive experience, but there was so much learning that happened. And as soon as that match ended, when this idea was first formed, it was an idea that Central and I were going to play, and then after we were done playing, we were going to invite 2 other teams to take over. And after the match, I was talking to your coach, and we're like, yeah, this is our thing. Like we're doing this, and we're going back. And so we immediately met with some administrators and said, hey, we want to come back. We want to make it better. We've learned so much, and we learned very quickly that the feeling around the people on the island was that this was a really positive experience, and they were excited about the prospect of us coming back. And so we knew about a year ago that this was probably going to happen again. We just needed the support of our administration, which they are giving us 100% support. And we're adding new things. John had alluded that he's playing there, and the theater department doing their performances we're really excited about. But ultimately, this is an opportunity very early in the season for our team to kind of detach from the world and get out there and have some opportunities to grow together and learn about each other, and then ultimately culminate with a match against Central Michigan, who's a Division I opponent that's going to challenge us and make us better. They've been practicing for longer than we have. They're ahead of the game. They've been playing for about a week longer than us. So we're going to be behind the 8 ball in terms of our competitiveness, but there's still no reason to believe that we shouldn't be competitive in that match and learn about ourselves and get this opportunity. And so, yeah, we're stoked for this. And it's kind of wild that we leave in like 3 days. We've just had our 3rd practice. And so we'll get there. We'll get there.
So we heard how the women's soccer team is going to be just kind of soaking in the island for the day of the match and the day before. Is it going to be similar for your team approach, or are you going to kind of, prepare for that game? I don't want to say a little bit more, but a little bit differently than how the women's soccer team is?
No, I think we're on the same page. One of the things we did last year, again, we talked about all the learning that happened, is we practiced here, and then we drove over, and then we took the ferry, and we basically wasted a day on the island. And I think that night, when I was on the island, I said, we can't do it this way. We got to get to the island as soon as possible. So we have a 7 a.m. bus, taking the ferry over at 10, I believe. We'll practice immediately once we get there. And then we'll spend the rest of the afternoon. We're doing a barbecue with the players and the families. Truly, this experience is about coming together as a team. People think growth only happens in the gym when you're working and you're playing the sport, but truly in a sport like ours, and I would say the same with soccer, a lot of it comes down to developing trust within each other, and some of that trust happens off the floor. And so when you get to know somebody, you develop that relationship with them. When you're on the floor, you're more likely to find success. And so yes, practicing and competing is a big part of it, and our preparation will be really just Thursday. And truly Thursday is just about learning how to do a warm-up before a match, because we haven't done that. And but after the match, we're doing some stuff with the theater department, and then Sunday we're doing some sort of sip and sail thing. I don't know. So there are more layers again to what we're doing, but ultimately the goal is when we come back on Sunday, we feel closer as a team. And I hope I feel it on the bus ride back.
You talk about being closer to the team, building team morale. What did you find out about your team when you did this a season ago, and you becoming closer with the ladies on the team as well?
It's just, this is kind of what we were saying, but there's nowhere to hide, right? So you're with each other all the time. You're getting just to know each other, right? There are 8 freshmen on this team, and there were, I don't remember how many freshmen last year. And so it's this opportunity when you're all spending all your time together just to get to know each other. That's just part of growing that bond as a team and developing that relationship. And last year, that was part of it, right? That was my first time ever on Mackinaw Island. And so you're looking around, like trying to soak it all in and asking people who have been there before questions about it. So I'm asking my players, like, hey, where did you go when you came with your family? And I think it'll be the same experience this year with some of those freshmen. We only have 2 of them are from the state of Michigan, and I think that only one of them had been when they were like a kid. And so their experience, so I now feel a little bit like the veteran, that I get to be like, oh yeah, this is where we had breakfast, or this is where the school is, this is the Grand Hotel, and kind of explaining all that, taking those bike rides that when you're going around the entire island, it can be tough. And so doing that together and having that experience is going to be amazing, and I'm very excited.
Speaking of those 8 freshmen, that's a very large freshman class of volleyball players. What are some of the strengths we might see from them on the court?
This is by far the most athletic team we've ever had. Every single freshman that's coming in brings a level of athleticism that, we lost Lizzie, Maddie, and Allie as seniors. They're all athletes, so I'm not saying we lost a bunch of non-athletes and we're replacing them with athletes. But when you have 8 of them, right, and so when you create that kind of depth in your roster, you can have the level of play stay high, because when someone's dragging or struggling, you sub them out, you bring somebody else in. And so I expect the level of play in the gym day in and day out to be more consistent at a higher level. We just experienced it. We just had practice this morning, and the end of the practice was really great and really intense, high energy. The execution is terrible. Let's get that straight, and I've told them that. But the non-negotiable things that you have to bring into the gym every day, effort, energy, communication, they had those things, right? And then you talk about a ball that's kind of shanked, and someone else is able to run that ball down and keep it alive, and the rally continues. Those are things we haven't always had before. And it's been really exciting to have that. And so now if we can continuously bring those 3 intangibles and then add the skill into it, I think we have a really high ceiling. TBD, right? We talk a lot about the word potential, and that's what we do as recruiters, is you bring in athletes that have the potential to be great, right? And then it's up to us as coaches and their teammates to help them realize that potential. We're kind of in that phase between there's potential there, we've seen glimmers of it, but not frequently enough. So hopefully as this week and next week go on, we're going to start to see that.
Coach, can you talk about the atmosphere on Mackinac Island when you're in that game, and the difference between, being here at Northern or traveling on the road? It's got to be a different feeling when you're there and in that gym and playing.
Yeah. I think everyone's aware of the experience that's being had. It's not just like another match where you get your ticket, you punch your ticket, you find your seat. It's like everyone's kind of interacting during it. And last year especially was kind of fun, because we're like, oh, we should have music. And it's like, well, they don't have a PA system hooked up, so let's grab a speaker and a microphone and do that. And grabbing Bill Dignite out of the crowd, like, hey, can you do just say Point Cats when we score? And so that whole thing. And then there are only 200 tickets available, right? We reserved 50 for our family and friends, 50 for Central's family and friends, 50 for the island, and then 50 general admission. And then they disappear like that. And so you think 200 people, how exciting can the atmosphere be? It's very exciting, because the place is completely full, really standing room only. And the people on the island, they've never seen competition live there before like this. And so watching, I invited the high school team, all 8 of them, to come watch, and to watch them see that and kind of be wide-eyed and be like, wow, this is so cool. Providing that experience for the people on the island is just as rewarding, and I think they give it back to us tenfold in their excitement to be there, because that's ultimately what you want to do. You want to play in front of a crowd that cares to be there, that's engaged in what you're doing. And very often when we're playing our conference schedule, some venues just don't fill, right? They don't get as many spectators. And it's kind of hard to create that energy. Our bench does an incredible job of supplying that. But when you're in a gym where it's just this self-sustaining ecosystem, kind of like when we play tech at home, right? You know it's just going to be wild and fun and exciting. That's kind of what you get when you're playing in Mackinaw as well.
Coach, would you say that there's more pressure because it's on Mackinac Island and it's such a big deal due to how new it is at the competition?
I mean, I did before you asked the question. I think there is always, when you're doing this, there's somewhat of a level of, you want to put on a show. You want it to be a good match, right? Last year, we got swept, but I felt like the level of competition was high, and it was fun to be a part of it. I even said to the athletes and their families after the match, like, I wish the score wasn't there because it was high-level volleyball back and forth. So there is this level of, like, you want to show up and put on a good show, but also for me as a coach, I want to see the progress, right? Like, when we're recruiting, one thing we talk a lot about is, like, those MAC schools, those Easterns, Westerns, Centrals, you want to be recruiting with those people. So we got to be able to compete with them. If we want to go to an athlete and be like, hey, come to Northern over those schools. And so there is that level of wanting to show up. But yeah, I don't know. It's always there. I guess the answer is it's always there. Like, there's never a match that starts that I'm not nervous about how we're going to perform, right? It's just something that lives inside me. But from a Mackinaw perspective, yeah, we know that people are watching us. We know that, this is something that people are excited about. So you want to make sure that we're not, laying an egg on them.
And then, Coach, I know you've only had a couple practices, but of those 8 freshmen, any things that you're seeing that's kind of standing out? Any players that are kind of reaching above what you had your expectations when you recruited them?
It is, like I said, the athleticism there. I think it'll be fun to watch our defensive specialists battle it out a little bit. So we have the returners in Kaylee Barlage and Julia Buma, and then we're adding Lauren Cardwell and Lisa Hogan, and they're really doing well. They're solidifying our ball control, because that was, a really big fear of mine going into the season. We lost 3 primary passers in our libero, Ali Yacco, Maddie Crowley, who'd been a staple in service lead, and then Lizzie Stark, who was a 4-time all-conference player. And so there is that, question, because if you want your offense to be humming, you got to be able to pass the ball, and they've done phenomenally. So I'd say those two. I mean, I'm just going to rattle off everybody. I'll try not to. And then I think the competition for the other outside position will be highly contested, because we lost Lizzie, like I said, who's a staple on the outside, and we're looking at Evan Layshak as potentially taking that as a returner, and then you would throw in the mix Remy Madison and Sydney Bartles. As well, and then you have Casey Baki, who's also coming in, and then Helen Beering, who's actually a Calumet native. All those people, I think, are going to be vying for that position, and they're big shoes to fill. And we don't pretend like that's not a thing. So we talk to them and say, hey, we need somebody to step up in this moment. And all signs through the first 3 practices are that someone's going to emerge. I don't know who, but all of them have different attributes that could help us succeed on the floor.
Sweet. Thank you,
Cool.
Coach.
Thanks,
Appreciate your
guys.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you.